So today we are talking about video editing with Adobe Premiere Rush. So video editing, as some of us may know, is the process by which we take existing video content and we rearrange it, trim it, edit, select different components, maybe some audio, maybe some still images, to stitch them together into a new finished product. Now, obviously, this process has probably become much more of interest as we're looking at a new landscape for teaching and being in need of tools to distribute lectures that can be available asynchronously, as well as the ability for us to communicate with each other on platforms such as Zoom that are synchronous, but then wanting to take some of that information and then make it available later on. So we're going to look at the very basics of using this program, which is available to the Bates community and specifically to Bates faculty. And then we'll leave some time at the end for questions as well as just comments about how the program works. So we've talked through the overview. I'll spare you the nitty-gritty details because we're going to talk through each of these individual bullet points. But basically, we're going to be looking at Adobe Premiere Rush. We'll also spend, I should have mentioned this earlier, a little bit of time talking about some of the alternatives to Adobe Premiere Rush. There are some excellent video editing programs out there that are available as well. And then we'll end with a couple of links to additional support and tutorials. So, getting started with Adobe Premiere Rush. Our first step involves installing a software called the Adobe Creative Cloud. And this is available to all members of Bates faculty. You can load it on your computer, and you can install the specific application, Adobe Premiere Rush, by visiting this link. And I hope everyone is able to access it, but in the initial email about this workshop today that I sent out early this morning, these slides that we're going through right now are available to you. So you can feel free to write this down, but also you can directly click on this link available in the slides to access this URL. When you click that, it's going to bring you to the Adobe Creative Cloud login, where you can type in your Bates email address or just simply bates.edu. And that is going to bring you to the ever familiar, the Duo login page, the Federated Authentication Service login page. So that's how you're going to load Adobe Creative Cloud onto your computer and then also access the application, specifically Adobe Premiere Rush. So let's return to our slideshow here. So once that application is installed, and again, the help desk, Cynthia actually mentioned this at the very beginning, I'm not quite sure how I can get this program loaded on my computer. You can always reach out to us, but if there's any trouble with, oh, the software's not compatible with my specific operating system or something like that, definitely feel free to reach out to the help desk and they can definitely help you with making sure that the software is compatible, or if you need an update or upgrade, they can sort that out. We're going to dive into, let's assume we've got the program loaded on our computer. We're getting ready to go. We have an idea for a new video project with some existing materials, and we want to stitch it together. We want to create something that, I'll use as an example, which we'll walk through today. I have a lecture that I recorded myself using Zoom on my computer, and I want to edit down some spots where I, maybe rambled a little bit or said something that wasn't quite correct, and I want to also incorporate a couple of images and maybe a voiceover. So we're going to look at all those things together. So the first thing, however, before we do any video editing, whatever video editing platform we're working on, is something called file management. And I love this because it's like the driest sounding thing in the world, but it's the most important step whenever you're working on a digital project. What you want to do when you're getting ready to embark on a video editing project, I'm going to step out of our slideshow for a second here, is create a new file in which your materials, which includes the video files that you're hoping to edit or trim or adjust, the music files or voiceover files that you've already created, images such as slides or any other still image you want to incorporate into your project, create yourself a new folder and individually give those assets or specific media objects their own folders so they're nice and organized. This, I can't tell you how much grief this is going to save you down the line. It will make what could be oh my gosh, I can't find where this one lecture is. They're all labeled the same. They're all labeled Zoom 0 or the date, and I don't remember which date. I totally hear you. I've been there. The number one step to prevent that sort of feeling of disorganization is to really be rigorous from the outset, to set yourself up with a nice file management structure. So once that's all set and you have a really nice file management folder ready on whether it's your desktop or documents folder, PC or Mac, however it works best for you, you are going to open the Adobe Premiere Rush application. And I've got that loaded up for us. So the first time that you walk through the Adobe Premiere Rush interface, one of the wonderful things about this program is that it's going to offer you a couple of video tutorials. It's going to display a quick sort of introduction to any tool as you hover your cursor over it. It's going to say, click on here to do this. It's really a user-friendly intro program, which is one of the reasons that I was really drawn to it. I'd also point out the first time you open it, it's going to quite literally have an example project for you to work with. It's kind of ironic. It's footage from, it looks like someone's sort of tropical vacation. So I don't know. For me, I had to delete it because I kept getting so jealous. So if that's not of interest, get rid of it. But it could be a really great and useful tool for just clicking around in a non-destructive way on how do I mess with some of the tools that we're going to talk about today. But for our purposes, I'm going to walk through the steps as though you are starting your first original project. So I've deleted that example project. We're just going to start from scratch. So we open up the application. You're going to be greeted by a page that is your projects. And our first step to creating a new project is going to be selecting this button in the left corner, Create New Project. What this is going to do is open up a interface that's taking a look at all of the different assets on your computer. As you'll see on the left-hand side here, those are broken down the way that a Finder folder would be in Mac or on a PC. The files that are on my desktop, the files that are in my documents, the files that are in my downloads, and then if we were perhaps syncing some of this stuff with the Creative Cloud, which I'll talk about in a second, those files would also be available to you. But because we've taken that great first step and we've organized our footage into one clear folder that's on my desktop, I can open up this folder, Example Premiere Rush Project, and I see neatly organized those different folders with assets in them. To select the assets, the video files, the music, the voiceovers, the images, whatever I want to include in my project, you, in this first step, are going to open up each of these folders or find that media and select by clicking once. And as you'll see, that's going to create a sort of blue bar, or excuse me, a blue square around that asset. But it's also going to begin to arrange those assets down at the bottom into what's called a sequence. We're going to talk about sequence in a little bit, but basically what it's doing is arranging your individual assets in a row. The assumption being, oh, I generally want them to be in this order. Now, you're not locked into this order. It's not set in stone, but it's a helpful tool to sort of get you organized for, oh, I want this to happen first, and then I want this other thing to happen then, or Adobe Premiere Rush is trying to help you with some of that organization. So I know I have a test recording that I did earlier this week. I know I have some images from the Bates campus that I want to include, and you'll see as I click on these different items, they're starting to appear in the sequence down below. And I know I have some underscoring that I wanted to include. Now, once I have all of the media selected that I'd like to incorporate into my project, I'm going to give my project a name. You can always change this, but it's very important to give it a name that you will remember so that when you're going back to edit in multiple stages, you'll be able to access that information clearly. So I'm going to give this the name CRC Workshop Test Lecture. All right. And once I have everything arranged, I've given it a name, I'm going to select in the bottom right-hand corner, Create. Now, once this is all arranged, we've gone from the sort of import interface into our editor interface. Now, we're going to talk through all of the different tools that we have available to us, but I just wanted to walk very quickly through the basic structure of what we're looking at. In the top dead center, this is our viewer window. You are able to see your project in progress, and wherever what's called the playhead, which is this blue bar, wherever that is, that's reflective of what is what is happening in the sequence below. So down below this viewer bar, we have our sequence or timeline, which is all of the media in our project arranged in order. And then below that, we have some audio, which is the underscoring that we imported at the beginning, which we can either trim to length or place at specific moments within our project. So for our purposes, I'm actually going to get rid of that audio because I don't want to mess with it yet. And then I'll point out our next most important aspect of this interface. If you want to add other things to your project, or you want to access something that you've deleted from the timeline, but you think you maybe want to reincorporate into what you're working on, if you click this button up here, see everything that's in your project, or the project panel, this is the sort of bin file here, this is going to open up all of the different assets that you initially had placed into your project. Now, if you are looking to incorporate an additional element, such as another image or another piece of video, you can simply open back up your original file management folder and then click and drag that media asset into that folder. So it's a work in progress. You can keep adding to your library. One of the metaphors that I end up using is the project panel is like your palette. These are all the available paints to you. And then the sequence down below here, the timeline, that's like the canvas. That's where we're putting all of these elements together and deciding and arranging and making choices about what's going to be the most effective video story. So I'm going to close that out, and we're going to move on to our next item for illustration, next item to talk through, which is, okay, I have a bunch of things in a row, but I want to make some changes to them. I want to trim the edges of a clip that I know is too long, or I want to take something that's one piece and split it up into multiple pieces. So in order to do that, there are a number of different tools available to you on the bottom left-hand corner. So as I said, when you move the playhead throughout the timeline, you can either manually move it, or you could press the space bar, go to play. Hey everyone, welcome to our workshop on the video editing program, Adobe Premiere Rush. So I have here a quick recording that I've made of myself giving an intro to our lesson for today. And as I watch through it, we're going to see that there are probably some elements that I want to get rid of. Okay, we're rolling, getting ready to go. Hey everyone, welcome to our workshop on the video editing program, Adobe Premiere Rush. I'll take a quick break. All right, everyone, thanks for watching. Great, so that's all in a row, but we know we've got to break that up so that it makes more sense as, you know, a video that contains multiple moments of me talking, but without the sort of extra getting ready or that something in the middle. So I'll show you first how to trim a clip. This involves taking the either end of a video clip and either shortening the front or shortening the back. To do so, you'll notice when you select a clip in the timeline, an orange box appears with these large sort of highlighted edges. And as I hover my mouse over it, that little arrow appears. If I, for instance, wanted to adjust the beginning of my clip so that it started when I began the introduction rather than my getting ready, I could simply click and hold and drag that clip to where I know I want it to start, which I think was about here. Hey everyone, welcome to our workshop on the video. Easy as that. So that's a great tool for making those quick adjustments to the edges of a clip, to the beginning and end. But let's say, as we see in this next moment coming up, that this clip is actually something I want to split up into two sections. If I go from this portion where I introduce the video to the next portion where I'm saying thanks for watching, and I want to split those in two, I could use the cut tool, which are the scissors icon on the left, to split a clip. To do that, I would simply place my playhead at the general area where I wanted to split the clip, and I would click the split the clip icon one time, and then you'll see these are now two distinct video clips. From there, I can rearrange by clicking and dragging where that item appears on my sequence. So now I have my introduction in one place. I have some images that I want to use, and then I have my goodbye in another place. So I'll just make a quick trim here also because I know I had a little fumble there. As a general rule, the sequence can contain multiple videos, images, whatever you want to incorporate in a row. But it's important to note that while the duration of what you're working on might be pretty short, it also might be something that's a little bit longer than just the 10-second thing that we're looking at here. So you can zoom in and out of your sequence, which it's different from changing the length of the clip. It's actually just zooming in and out on the project file that we're working on by using this toolbar at the very bottom of your screen, clicking and hovering and clicking on the edge of that toolbar to zoom in and out. So I'm not changing the duration of my project. I'm just zooming in and out to get a closer look at how at the video elements so that I can make more minute adjustments. So we'll just pause there for a second because I know that's a lot of information. We're going to move on to our next item that we're going to look at, which is all of the audio elements in our project file. As you can probably see here, at the very sort of bottom of the video clip where I'm speaking, there's what look like little lines. These are called waveforms. They indicate how much audio is happening at that given moment in a clip. To give myself more information and a more detailed view of what is happening in the audio at that specific moment, I can click this viewer option in the bottom left corner, expand audio. This is going to open up, not detach, it's just think of it as another zooming option, open up more information, a more detailed view of the waveform files, which allow me to get a sense of, oh, here's what's happening at this moment. One trick that video editors often use for cutting out dead space or quickly figuring out where's the beginning and end of a moment of speaking in a video clip would be to take a look at the waveform. For instance, I can see in this moment that there's not much going on right here. So I could actually adjust this clip a little bit further so that it starts, this video clip will now start with, all right, everyone, thanks for watching. That nice clean beginning. So what we're doing is making those minute adjustments in order to arrange the video and audio in a way that feels nice and clean for the viewer. So another element of audio that might come up as we're putting together our first video editing projects is I have an image, it's a slide maybe, or it's maybe a piece of art that I want to describe, or there's a numerical equation that I want to explain further, and I want to incorporate all these things into a video lecture. Adobe Premiere Rush has a feature to allow you to record a voiceover using the built-in microphone from your computer. To do this, to record voiceover, we are actually creating a new piece of media. So I know this is maybe sort of editor jargon, but we are, instead of incorporating something that already existed into a video editing program, which we then rearrange, we're actually creating a new asset, a new item. So to do so, we're going to use our Add Media button, which is in the top left corner. That's going to pop up 3 options. Media would be if we wanted to add some additional footage that already existed on our computer. We can also do that through the Project Media panel, but that's another option. But for our purposes right now, we're going to select VoiceOver. This is going to open up a new track. Now, we haven't talked about tracks very much. We just talked about there's video and then there's audio. Premiere Rush is a really excellent introductory video editing program because it gives you access to this slightly more advanced video editing approach, which is to have more than one audio element or video element playing at the same time. Now, the reason, as you can probably imagine, that some introductory programs don't want to let you do that is accidentally you could put something on top of itself and you have yourself talking while you're talking and it's just sort of a jumble or a mess. But I'll give the disclaimer that I find the voiceover feature of Premiere Rush pretty simple and easy to use. But if it ever feels like this is too confusing, it's not working out, you could always record that audio on a separate program, such as QuickTime on your Mac computer or even on your phone and share that via email or Google Drive. But I find Premiere Rush's voiceover technology pretty easy to use. So to start recording, similar to the approach that we used for arranging our, splitting our clips, putting the playhead in one place and then splitting the existing media in one spot, we're going to use that same idea to arrange the playhead where we want the voiceover to begin. So I think I want it to begin about here in my timeline over this nice image of Bates College in the fall. And to start recording, I'm going to press this red dot here, which is going to begin recording using the built-in microphone from my computer. If you're doing this for the first time, you may need to click Allow for Premiere Rush to access your microphone. You might be familiar with that the first time you used Zoom, or if you used another sort of like Google Meet, like a video conferencing application. It's the same idea. You're giving permission to the program to access your computer's microphone. So I'm going to press Adobe Premiere Rush. You'll see a countdown appear. Welcome to our video introduction to Adobe Premiere Rush. And to stop recording, I'm going to press that button again. And then you'll notice, like we were just discussing, there is a new piece of media that's been created by Premiere Rush, recorded using our computer microphone that now is in our project in its own track on the timeline. You don't necessarily need to remember all of these names off the top of your head, but the basic idea being we've created something new, we're throwing it into the mix as well. And we can give that a welcome to our video introduction to Adobe Premiere Rush. Now, one really nice thing is that we, along with all the other assets, media elements in our project, we can make adjustments to where this audio is on our timeline, as well as trim the beginnings and ends of it, or split it if we maybe had a longer voiceover into two different pieces. One really nice thing about Premiere Rush is you can also always Command Z, or I'm blanking on the PC equivalent off the top of my head, but click Edit Undo, and you can go back a step or multiple steps to undo something if it's not looking how you wanted it to. Okay, so now we have a project. It's starting to come together. We have some a clip that we've split up into the correct chunks. We have some voiceover over an image. We're kind of getting there. We're thinking it's looking pretty good, but we want to incorporate something that will really help the viewer to understand the beginning and end of the project, and maybe a title sequence or an element that allows the viewer to know what they're watching as soon as they're watching it. Premiere Rush has a number of titles, transitions, as well as color correction and speed effects that you can add to your project. This I would return to the really nice feature of Premiere Rush that it reminds you as you use it what each of the buttons does, which I find like personally so reassuring because it's a program that's kind of new to me, but it's a great asset to have a reminder as you're going through. So let's say I wanted to add a title to the beginning of my example video lecture here. By selecting this button one time, the titles button, it's going to open up a panel with some prefabricated animated titles. Now there's a big library of these, and we don't necessarily have time to go through all of them right now, but I would just offer that as you hover your mouse over each one, it's going to give you a quick sort of preview of what that title looks like. And this is something that I've noticed as I've introduced this program to a couple of other colleagues. It may be a little bit confusing thinking, oh, if this already exists, then I can just double click it and it will appear, and it feels like, oh, the title's not appearing. Think of these as assets the same way that we thought of our initial media and the new voiceover that we've created. You want to click and drag this element into your timeline. Now, the main difference I would point out between a title and other types of media is that, as you probably just saw, you have the option to add a title to an existing video as a secondary video track where it will appear above or on top of an existing video, or you can add it to an empty or beginning spot in your timeline, which will create a simple title with a black background. So I'm going to opt for that that second option because I really like the sort of simple black background effect. But if you're looking to add a title or call out a specific moment, or maybe even in an image, I'll give this as an example, sort of give a credit, like let's say this photographer is someone I want to credit. That's an option for an additional element you could add to your video project. But I'm not going to opt for those for now. I'm just going to go for the simple title. To edit the text in the title, all you need to do is double click, and that's going to open up a title box, which allows you, think of it as kind of like the fonts option in Microsoft Word or something like that. It gives you a couple choices for what you want that text to look like, and you can enter the custom text. Intro to Adobe Premiere. Oh, this is actually a great case in point. That's not looking so good, right? the title is much too large. You can also, as I was saying, adjust the font, but you can certainly adjust the font size so that the font is much more legible. Let's say your title is too large. Each of these elements, the text elements, are going to have maybe a basic bit of animation to them, but they're, I would say, less is often more with incorporating transitions or titles into your project. That sometimes can take up a large amount of space or memory, and it also can be something that's a little finicky to play with. I just would give, this is just personal preference, I'll give the general advice or caveat that less is often going to be more in terms of messing around with titles and the sort of jazziness of those sequences. As you get down into the sort of depths here of Adobe's different prefabricated options, they get a little bit sort of 1960s ad agency. So just to give that personal preference disclaimer. So we have here a timeline that has some text elements and video elements, but I really want to add a transition. A transition is when we take one or more media elements and we add some sort of effect when we move between them. Adobe Premiere Rush, similar to what we just messed around with titles, has a little sort of mini library of different types of transitions. In the same spirit of my advice with titles, I would say less is more with transitions. There's certainly a temptation, and I've fallen prey to this myself, when you're editing videos for the first time, to throw in transitions here, throw in transitions there. It can end up being kind of distracting, and it takes up a large amount of memory space for the project itself. And basically, you want to err on the side of simplicity. For our purposes in this example, I would just offer that one great transition to really clean up the quality and look of one's video is to add a fade at the end to sort of illustrate that what you're watching is completed, and it's a nice sort of fade out to show that it's ended. And I'll just show you quickly what that looks like. So even just that little bit can help really take something from kind of looks like I just threw it together to something that's a little bit more polished. And to make adjustments to the duration of that fade, it's the same principle of trimming our clips. We can click and drag on the edge, and you'll notice it applies a transition to the audio as well. So that might be useful to try and sort of smooth the edges of the end of or beginning of a clip. So I'm just going to make 2 quick behind the scenes adjustments here so we don't have me waiting to turn off the video. So now we've sort of rattled through the basics of, okay, here's how we put together, a project. It has all these different elements. We're really happy with how it looks. I've got video elements, I've got images, I've got a title, I've got a transition. It's really looking nice. How do I take this project and then share it with other people? So to do that, what we're going to do, we've assembled basically a work in progress, right? It has all these elements together, but what the program, Adobe Premiere Rush is doing is allowing you to sort of sample those elements and arrange them for you. But you can't share this as it stands because the receivers would need to have the same program. To share it and stitch it together as a finished exported video file, we're going to go through a process called rendering. So basically, we're going to take all these elements, zip them all together, and they're going to be a video file that we can share. We can upload them to Google Drive. We could upload them to an unlisted YouTube link, to Lyceum, etc. So if we go in our edit, top left corner here, that's where we were in our edit interface. We're going to click share, and that opens up this interface, which is our sharing. You're going to see some options on the left here, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Behance, which is another sort of more obscure Adobe app. I'm going to make a very strong suggestion. Please consider just using the top one, local. What local means is it's going to share a copy of the video file to your computer. You can always take that video file, upload it to YouTube, upload it to Google Drive, whatever, wherever you want it to be streaming and available. But if you use one of those direct sharing options, such as YouTube or Facebook, I've just seen too many times that render sort of fails or gets caught in between, or you thought it worked and it didn't work, but it can be much more confusing. So definitely consider using that local option. You're now going to have the option to give this a name. The reason that it says sequence 1 is that multiple sequences can be contained within one project. That's kind of like a meta thing to think about. I would advise just keeping one sequence per project just for simplicity's sake. But this is where you have the opportunity to decide what is this finished video file going to be named. So I'm going to name it our lecture test. And you also have the ability to decide where that's saved. I'm going to save it on the desktop of my computer. And it's giving you an estimated file size, 28 megabytes. It's pretty short, but that's actually a pretty reasonable file size. If you'd like, you can get a little bit more advanced with the different presets for resolution and frame rate and quality. If these are video files that you're sharing via streaming, uploading them, I would definitely say try to consider either the 1080 or 720p. Those are different resolutions that I think would be totally acceptable for streaming. There's no real reason to use the 4K Ultra HD unless you were going to be sharing your finished project on like a full-sized cinema screen. That's the main reason that that's there. So we're just going to select 1080p, and once all of those settings are to our liking, we are going to, oh, I'm sorry, I should also mention, you can quickly, if you just want to double check your work before exporting, you can scrub through to make sure everything's there, or you can press play, which gives you the ability to take a look at what you've got so far. Hey everyone, but I'm feeling pretty confident that we have what we need. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, you can select export. That's going to start the rendering process. And obviously for this, it's a pretty short project, so it's going to be ready quickly. And we can select done. And we can double check. We'll look on our desktop here. Oops. Sorry, gang. Just tracking down our finished file. User share walk into. There we go. Sorry, I had set it actually to a more obscure folder. So if that ever does happen and you're like, where did my exported file go? As you can see, you can head back into your project, do the rendering again, or you could always, in the top right-hand corner of a Mac, you could select Spotlight, or you could use a Finder folder to search. When the file is finished rendering, there's also this View in Finder option. That's maybe going back on best practices here, maybe what I should have selected rather than just trying to exit out of the program and be showy. Look, there it is. But in any event, we had a nice dry run on that. And so if we select the View in Finder, lecture test, we know that's looking like it's been rendered here. We'll double click that. And now we have our finished video file, which has been Hey everyone, welcome to our workshop on the video editing program as an MP4, which is a compatible codec for PC and for Mac computers, which is really nice. And I'll just give a final quick note on entering and exiting Premiere Rush. There are three sort of options here in addition to edit, share. There's also this home option. When you reopen Adobe Premiere Rush, you'll see the home option, which was the first place we ended up. But now that we've worked on a new project, you'll see I have multiple projects in here. The one that we started today and one that was already existing there. So that's kind of your home base to access your different video editing projects. So really quickly, let's return to our slideshow for 1 second. I just wanted to barrel through a couple of quick alternatives here. We're not going to go into them in any detail right now, but I did want to also note that Adobe Premiere Rush is not the only video editing software out there. We do have a number of other options that are available to you. Quickly, to run through some that I like, Adobe Premiere Pro is kind of the older brother or this sort of industry standard version of Premiere Rush. I'd be happy to talk to folks about using Premiere Pro, although I'll give the disclaimer, it does have a steeper learning curve because there's just many more tools. Doesn't mean it's worse, it's just takes a little bit longer to get to know it. Adobe Spark is another software available from Adobe, but it's actually an even easier to use interface that's web-based. We'll probably be running some type of workshop on that later this summer, and it's something that I would encourage you to check out. Each of these titles are hyperlinked, so if you click through, you can, at the conclusion of the presentation, you can click on the title of each of these, and it will bring you to more information on them. And then the last, which I'll actually be definitely be giving a workshop on later this month, is iMovie. iMovie is the native introductory video editing software available for Mac computers. It is just for Macs, unfortunately, but it has many of the features that we've gone over today with Premiere Rush. And finally, I just wanted to conclude by saying that there is a really wonderful wealth of video tutorials available on Adobe Premiere Rush. This text is hyperlinked to bring you to Adobe's tutorial page. And we are also assembling our own Bates-specific list of resources. So I'll just quickly give you a preview of both of these things. And you know, I'd give the completely honest assessment that, and I don't mean to speak for you, Brandon, but you know, I know CRC, we are constantly looking at tools like help video tutorials produced by the owners and producers of these software. I find them really, really helpful. And what we'll try and do is, as we encounter really helpful tutorials, we'll keep track of them on our websites, like the Digital Media Studios website or the Curricular and Research Computing Remote Teaching and Learning Resources page. So I think that is the conclusion of the presentation portion of our workshop today. And what I'm going to do, if I can get the button to reappear, is turn things back over to the group so that we can talk through any questions or comments that you might have. So